Welcome to the deep dive. So today you've sent in some pretty intense material, honestly. We're going to be looking at DIMAC, which a lot of people describe as the art of pressure point striking in martial arts.
Yeah, definitely. The stuff you sent over focuses in, like
Yeah.
really zoos in on specific DIMMAC points. And it really goes into like the documented effects of what happens when these points are
Yeah.
actually struck.
Right. And just to be super clear right off the bat, we're not trying to give anyone a how-to guide for, hurting people. What we're really interested in here is understanding these super complex, sometimes kind of freaky connections within the human body.
Hmm.
The way these martial arts traditions understand them and write about them, kind of like exploring the body's secret architecture or something.
Exactly. Think of it as a roadmap. We're going to journey through these points on what are called meridians. These are, pathways that are believed to carry vital energy throughout the body. We're going to start with the lung and colon meridians, and then we'll move through the stomach, spleen, heart, small intestine, bladder, kidney, pericardium, triple heater, gallbladder, liver, and even the conception and governing vessels. We're going to look at their locations and the potential effects of striking them.
Right. So the mission today is to kind of extract those key insights into where the body's vulnerable and how this concept of energy flow, this chi, works within DIMAC. Hopefully we can uncover some surprising details and those aha moments about how connected our physical and energetic systems really are. Okay, let's dive in, starting with the lung meridian. Now, one thing you'll hear us say a lot is kun. This is a traditional unit of measurement, kind of like, roughly the width of your thumb joint. So when we say 1 kun below or whatever, that gives you an idea of the distance.
Right. So the lung meridian, often abbreviated as LU, starts with a point called LU4. It's also known as Shiabai, which I think roughly translates to gallantry white. And it's located on the medial upper arm. It's about 1 kun below another point, LU3. And it's on the radial side of the biceps muscle. Now, the lung meridian, as you might guess, is associated with respiration and the body's connection to the external environment.
And according to what you shared, a strike here has some immediate effects, pretty similar to hitting LU3, actually, but maybe with worse pain, like right where you get a hit. And also this electrical shock feeling. It's also described as a nerve strike, one that could potentially cause the brain to shut the body down for a bit. And then later there's a mention of potential emotional problems, although it says they're less severe than with LU3. It's interesting. Going through these first few points on the lung meridian, there's this recurring theme of connecting the physical strike to not only immediate neurological things like that electrical shock we talked about, but also like a delayed emotional impact. It makes you wonder if in DIMAC, these aren't just physical targets, but maybe points where different parts of us converge.
Yeah, that immediate, almost like neurological impact, and then this delayed but less intense emotional response, that's really fascinating. It really does point to, a connection between these specific points and both the physical and emotional body, even if, Western medicine doesn't totally get how it works.
Moving down the arm along the lung meridian, we get to LU5. It's known as Ches, or cubit marsh. It's located in that depression of the elbow fossa on the ulnar aspect, right there at the cubital crease. And it's on the radial side of the biceps tendon near where the brachioradialis muscle originates. This one sounds pretty intense from what you've sent.
It does. The sources you've provided say it can cause huge damage to the whole system and even knockout potential if you hit it with, they call it a dead arm strike.
Yeah.
That's basically throwing a totally loose, heavy arm at the target. Right. It's not just that either. They mention upper body imbalance, like physically and energetically, and a big drain of chi from the lungs leading to almost instant power loss. They even mention potential brain damage from a strong strike to this point. It being a he point, which in acupuncture is where ki flows into the meridian, suggests that hitting it hard can really disrupt that flow, like in a major way. Maybe that's why you get that immediate loss of power.
So just to be clear for our listeners, in DIMAC and traditional Chinese medicine, ki is that vital life force or energy that flows through these meridian pathways.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is where things get super interesting. Next up on the lung meridian is LU6, called Kongzui. It translates to opening maximum. It's located on the palmar side of your forearm, 7 kun above LU9, on the line that connects to LU5 within the brachioradialis muscle. So the immediate effect, they say, is lower arm paralysis and feeling like you got punched right in the lungs. There's a real twist with this point.
There is. LU6 is what's called a G-cleft point. These points, they're areas where qi and blood kind of pool up. So in, healing practices like acupuncture, LU6 is used as an emergency point. It helps release qi to the lungs. But when you strike it, it's like the opposite effect. They say if you get hit in the lung area, your body naturally tries to use its reserve qi to help you recover. But if you hit LU6 right after, it blocks that release. And it can be really bad. They even say it could be fatal within minutes.
Wow. So a point that helps release chi in an emergency can be deadly when you strike it. That's wild. It really shows that it's not just about where the point is, but how you stimulate it, the type and intention behind it.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so that's quite a contrast. The point for emergency chi release turning potentially fatal. It all depends on how you stimulate it. It really shows that these points are not just static places on your body. Moving further down the arm, we get to LU7, leak, or broken sequence. It's above the radial styloid process. It's about 1.5 kun above the wrist crease. This one, even though it's on the wrist, sounds pretty nasty.
Yeah, even a light strike to LU7, they say, can cause a lot of pain and a big key drain, often enough to make you want to sit down right there. They even mention potential knockout from a light strike. But what's really interesting here is this yin-yang imbalance they describe between the lung and colon meridians that a strike causes. They say it can lead to artificial grief and actually impair your ability to learn physical skills, which might get worse over time.
Artificial grease, that's a pretty heavy and unexpected emotional response from hitting someone on the wrist.
Yeah.
It emphasizes how these meridians connect and affect us beyond just the physical.
Hmm.
Moving a little lower, we have LU8 called Jingguo, or across the ditch. It's 1 kun above the wrist crease on the radial side of the radial artery. You've noted that this one causes significant key drainage, which sets up other attacks.
Right, and what's fascinating about LU8 is they compare it to HT5 on the heart meridian, which is also known for causing knockout if it's overstimulated. LU8 is also a metal and Jing point. It's the horary point of the lung channel. A horary point is a point that's most active during a specific 2-hour period based on the Chinese clock.
Mhm.
So hitting LU8 is thought to really mess up the qi in the lung channel during its most active time, which then throws off the lungs for the rest of the day. And this initial imbalance can actually have a ripple effect, leading to daily problems and even messed up sleep, especially between 3 and 5 a.m. That time is actually when the opposing bladder meridian is most active, and they think it could lead to needing to pee more because of a qi deficit in the bladder meridian right then.
Wow. So a strike here not only drains chi right away, but then messes with your body's clock and even affects another meridian hours later. And finally, we reach the end of the lung meridian with LU9 called Taiwan or Great Abyss. This point is right at the wrist crease on the radial side of the radial artery. You can usually feel your pulse there.
Right. It's another big qi drainage point. It's an earth, yuan, and shu point. And it's a meeting point where the pulse can be felt. They say you need a precise strike for it to work, but if you hit it right, it causes serious local pain, major qi drain, and breathing problems that feel like you're suffocating. As a yuan point, hitting it could really hit your core energy reserves.
So the lung meridian shows how interconnected everything is, with strikes causing all sorts of physical, emotional, and systemic effects. Now let's move on to the colon meridian, often shortened to Sio.
The colon meridian starts in the hand and runs all the way up the arm to the shoulder. First up, we have CO5, called Yangtze, or adjoining valley. You find it on the radial side of your wrist, tilt your thumb up. It's that depression between the tendons of extensor pollicis longus and brevis.
This one's called a natural short-out point, especially when used with SI2 on the small intestine meridian. They say if you put diagonal pressure across the back of the wrist there, it can make someone drop to their knees because it hurts so much. It's interesting how these 2 points, one fire and one water in some systems, are linked in how they affect you.
It really shows that balance, between those opposing forces in the body's energy system. Next up is CO6, called Pianli, or partial order. It's 3 kun above CO5, on the line to C11 further up the arm.
This one, they say, drains a lot of qi and causes serious local pain if you strike it. They also mention knockout potential if you hit it hard enough. Interestingly, they say it can mess up communication between what are called the upper and lower heaters. These are like regions of the body in traditional Chinese medicine with their own energetic functions. And this messed up communication can damage internal qi. And then, get this, they say it could cause long-term emotional problems because it suppresses negative emotions and even negative thoughts.
Yeah, the idea that a physical strike can have a lasting emotional effect by messing with qi and trapping those emotions, that's a key part of how Dimac sees things. Moving up the arm, we have CO7, called Wenli, or warm slide. It's about 5 kun above CO5. You can find it best with your fist clenched, elbow flexed. It's a xi-cleft point, so, chi tends to gather there.
Right. So hitting CO7 causes local pain, key drainage, and pain along the whole colon meridian channel. It can even knock someone out if you hit it hard enough. Interestingly, they say it sets up a strike to CO11 really well, which, as we said, is at the elbow. And the knockout potential from hitting CO7 is even stronger if you hit the jaw at the same time, especially one of those neurological shutdown points there.
Yeah, the idea of using one point to set up another, that's a big part of DIMAC strategy.
Exactly. So next is CO8, called Giallian, or lower integrity. This one's 4 cun below CO11 on the back of the forearm, close to the thumb side. It's not a xi-cleft point, but they still say it can cause a knockout if you hit it really hard. But here's the kicker. They say combining it with LU1, the first point on the lung meridian on the chest, can make the effect 10 times stronger, especially if you hit LU1 first. They say it basically drains your whole body's power and ends the fight right there. That's a pretty huge boost from 2 different meridians.
It shows just how connected everything is and how hitting seemingly far apart points in a certain order can have a huge combined effect.
Right. And then just a little further up the arm, there's CO9, called Shanglian, or upper integrity. It's 3 cun below CO11, in the same general area on the back of the forearm. They say hitting this one can paralyze the hand and arm. Like CO8, they say it also causes big power loss if you combine it with LU1 on the chest.
Yeah.
So again, emphasizing that combo with the lung point for both paralysis and taking away power.
Great.
Now we get to CO10, called Shu Sanli, or arm's 3 measure. It's 2 cun below CO11 on the thumb side of the radius bone in the forearm. This one, based on what you've shared, sounds like a big deal.
It is. CO10, they say, can cause arm paralysis and in some cases even stop the heart. There's talk of a shock wave going up the arm into the upper body and even affecting the brain, which could lead to a knockout. And they specifically mention using it with ST9 on the stomach meridian for a potential death blow. And get this, the direction you strike CO10 also matters. Striking upwards can cause key loss in the lower body and nausea, while striking downwards might cause a bowel movement. A straight-in strike can cause spasms in the lower abdomen, arm paralysis, and diarrhea.
The fact that the effect changes depending on which way you strike is crazy. It really shows how specific these points are and how they work with the body's systems. Next, we have CO11, called Kuchi, or crooked pool. This point is on the outer end of the elbow crease. You say it's a major earth and heat point. Now, heat points are usually about calming and regulating the system in acupuncture, right?
Right. Normally, stimulating a heat point like CO11 would harmonize the body's energy, but they say when you hit it with what they call negative chi, it does the opposite. Not only can it damage the elbow joint itself, but it could also weaken all the joints in your body. Diarrhea and vomiting are also mentioned, and it can mess up the balance between Shen, which is like the spirit or mind, and the physical body. They even warn about potentially hurting your hand when striking this point, suggesting a palm strike might be better. So another point with a usually harmonizing function, but a destructive reversal when struck forcefully with intention.
Another harmonizing point with a destructive reversal when struck forcefully with intention.
Yeah.
Okay, moving just a bit above the elbow, we have CO12, called Zuliao, or elbow seam. It's 1 cun above and to the outside of CO11, above the bony bump on the outer elbow.
CO12, they say, drains a lot of chi when you strike downwards into the elbow joint. They recommend a knife-edge palm strike, starting palm down and rolling up during the strike, kind of like a cutting action. They say many people would be seriously incapacitated and unable to continue after a strike like that.
A very specific striking technique for that one. Next on the list is CO13, called Shawuli, or 5 measures on the arm. It's 3 cun above CO11, above that same bony bump on the outside of the elbow. You've noted this one is more of a nerve point strike.
Right. Hitting CO13 is supposed to cause a lot of pain really fast, along with nervous system shock. They say even a medium strike might make someone give up. It hurts so much. A harder strike would, of course, make the pain even worse.
So this point seems all about causing intense pain and a strong neurological response. Moving further up the arm on the colon meridian, we get to CO14, called Binao, or arm and scapula. It's on the thumb side of the humerus bone, above the lower end of the deltoid muscle. You mentioned this is one of the 7-star key input blocking points.
Right, those 7-star points are where your body takes in energy from outside. Hitting CO14 blocks that energy, which leads to weakness and some pretty serious emotional problems. They say the mind doesn't really know what's wrong, just that something bad happened energetically.
Disrupting the intake of vital energy, with significant psychological effects. Interesting. And finally, we reach the end of the colon meridian with CO15, called Jianyu, or shoulder bone. It's forward and below the acromion, which is that bony part at the top of your shoulder blade. It's right in the middle of the upper part of the deltoid muscle. And this one's interesting because they say it doesn't actually do a lot of key damage.
Right. CO15 is more of a healing point in traditional applications. However, they do mention that a hard strike could still break or dislocate the shoulder, so it can be a useful physical attack even if it doesn't have strong energetic effects, according to these DIMMAC sources.
Okay, so the colon meridian, like the lung meridian, shows a system where strikes can cause immediate physical effects, disrupt energy flow, and even lead to longer-term emotional and systemic problems. Now let's move on to the stomach meridian, which we often shorten to ST.
The stomach meridian is a long one, running from the face down the torso and leg, ending on the foot. We'll start with ST6, called jiak, or jaw vehicle. It's about 1 finger width forward and above the angle of the jawbone. It's a classic knockout point in martial arts.
Right, and you point out how close it is to, they call the mind point. They say hitting that stops signals from the central nervous system getting to the brain, which causes an almost instant knockout. They also mention the risk of concussion from a strike to this area, which could cause nausea and memory loss. The description of concussion and its symptoms is pretty detailed, actually, emphasizing how serious a strike to this part of the face can be.
Right. The jaw area is pretty vulnerable because there are so many nerves there, and it's close to the brainstem, which controls a lot of important bodily functions. Moving down the face on the stomach meridian, we come to ST7, called Xiaoguan, or lower hinge. It's in that depression below your cheekbone, in front of the moving part of the lower jaw. This one's mainly a qi drainage point.
And they say it can knock someone out if you hit it with a small, focused weapon, like a one-knuckle punch. After you strike this point, people often feel a sensation going down the front of the neck on the same side, and then their legs lose power. They also mention that it can cause long-term problems with your ears.
The connection to ear problems shows just how complex these pathways are and how hitting one point can have effects in seemingly unrelated areas. Moving up the face on the stomach meridian, we find ST8, called two-way, or head support. It's about half a cun inside the hairline at the corner of the forehead.
This one, they say, causes concussion, and they specifically mention that it causes more nausea than a concussion from hitting other parts of the head. That's because it's on the stomach meridian. There's also big local pain and key drain right away, followed by a potential knockout. They even say that a hard enough strike could be fatal.
Yeah, the head's obviously a very important and vulnerable area. And strikes to points on the meridians that run through the head are often described as having really serious and potentially dangerous effects.
Absolutely. Moving down the forehead along the stomach meridian, we get to ST9, called Renaying, or man's welcome. It's level with the tip of the Adam's apple, right where the common carotid artery runs in the neck. It's a super effective knockout point.
It is. They say hitting ST9 can send a shockwave of chi straight to the brain, which can cause dizziness, knockout, or even a broken jaw. They specifically mention its connection to the heart through the carotid sinus and to the brain through other stomach meridian points, ST1 and ST8. It's also connected to the vagus nerve. All these things make ST9 a really effective knockout point because it affects both blood flow to the brain and those crucial nerve signals.
So basically, it's messing with how your brain gets both blood and information, which can have some serious consequences. Moving down from the face to the chest area along the stomach meridian, we get to ST13, called Kihu, or Ki's household. It's in the middle of the lower border of the collarbone. Now, the point above it, ST12, is said to mainly drain Qi, but ST13 does something different. They say ST13 actually adds yang Qi to the head. Too much yang energy in the head, according to traditional Chinese medicine, can make you lose your balance and fall. Like a lot of points on the stomach meridian, hitting this one also causes serious nausea. And they mention that ST13 is an entry point for Qi into the stomach meridian. So striking it forcefully can mess up the balance of yin and yang energy in the whole body.
Yeah, this concept of adding or draining specific types of qi through these points is really central to how DIMMAC works.
Absolutely. Next up on the stomach meridian is ST14, called Kufang, or storehouse. This one's in the space between the first and second ribs, right below the nipple. Apparently, if you hit this area hard enough, it causes this immediate sickly feeling in the chest, which quickly turns into full-blown nausea. So a direct hit to the chest with a focus on making you puke.
Right.
Just below ST14, in the space between the second and third ribs, also right below the nipple, we have ST15, called Wee, or room screen. This point is particularly interesting because of one very specific and very dangerous effect.
Yeah. Your sources are very clear that ST15 will stop the heart when struck at the same time as ST16, which is just below it. They say you can hit both at once with a flat palm. This highlights how dangerous it can be to hit multiple points at the same time, especially in close proximity. In this case, it could even be lethal.
So the idea of targeting multiple points for a combined, potentially deadly effect. We've seen that a few times now in DIMAC. Moving down to the abdominal area on the stomach meridian, we have ST19, called Burnong, or uncontainable. It's 6 kun above the belly button, and 2 kun to the side of CV14 on the conception vessel, which runs down the middle of the body.
Right. Now, ST18, they didn't really think was much to write home about, but ST19 is a different story. They say it attacks what they call the seat of power, similar to CV17, but even more damaging to the diaphragm because it hits those specific muscles that control the diaphragm. It can instantly make you feel powerless and lose your balance so you fall down. They even say you could die from suffocation if the strike is hard enough. So another attack on the diaphragm and the body's ability to breathe, highlighting a key vulnerability.
Another attack on the diaphragm and breathing, highlighting a key vulnerability. Right below that is ST20, called Chengman, or support fullness. It's 5 kun above the belly button and 2 kun to the side of CV13 on the conception vessel. And this one, they say, also attacks that seat of power, potentially causing knockout or even death. So that upper abdominal region seems to be a pretty vulnerable area, housing several points that can have some pretty serious effects.
It does. Now, moving down just a bit on the abdomen along the stomach meridian, we get to ST21, called Liangmin, or door of the beam. This one's 4 kun above the belly button and 2 kun to the side of CV12 on the conception vessel. This area is protected by the abdominal muscles, but ST21 is what they call an electrical point, which means it'll still have an effect even with the muscles there. It's supposed to cause a lot of pain right where you hit it, and it drains qi. And they say it messes with both the stomach and the spleen because of how it affects their yang qi.
Electrical point. So strong, immediate effect on the energy system, even through muscle. Makes sense. Next, we have ST22, called Guanmin, or gate closing. This point is 3 kun above the belly button and 2 kun to the side of CV11 on the conception vessel. And they specifically say that hitting this point messes with the communication between the upper and lower body.
Right. It disrupts coordination between the upper and lower body, so your legs feel confused, like you don't know what they're doing. There's also a feeling of something draining from the lower body, and eventually the legs just lose power and stability.
Interesting. Now, just 1 kun lower on the stomach meridian is ST23, called Tai, or Great E. It's 2 kun above the belly button and 2 kun to the side of CV10 on the conception vessel. They say ST23 has a lot of the same effects as ST22, like messing with the communication between upper and lower body and causing that draining sensation in the legs, but it also messes with the bladder and might make someone pee involuntarily if you hit it with a small weapon.
Yeah.
The idea of disrupting the body's internal communication and affecting bladder control through strikes to the abdomen is pretty specific and kind of disturbing, honestly. Moving lower still along the stomach meridian, we have ST24, called Huaramin, or door of slippery flesh. It's just 1 kun above the belly button and 2 kun to the side of CV9 on the conception vessel. Like some other abdominal points, it's somewhat protected by the abdominal muscles. However, it's described as having an electrical effect that specifically targets the colon and could cause painful defecation later on. Next up is ST25, called Tianshu, or Heaven's Axis. This point is 2 kun to the side of the center of the belly button. It's a mu colon point. Mu points are specific spots on the abdomen or chest that have a very direct energetic connection to a corresponding internal organ. So as the mu point for the colon, ST25 really affects how it works. Even though it's somewhat protected by the abdominal muscles, a hard strike here could knock someone out. It can also cause immediate diarrhea. And they even say there's a link between ST25 and both emotional and physical disorders because it can mess up the communication between the Shen, the spirit or mind, and the Zhang Fu, which refers to the internal organs, specifically the gallbladder and triple heater. They say after you get hit, the pain starts right at the point of impact and spreads out in a circle, and then you feel this huge loss of power throughout your whole body. So here we see this really direct connection between a physical strike to the abdomen and both immediate physical symptoms like, affecting the colon, but also potential emotional repercussions through disrupting these energy connections. And just below the belly button along the stomach meridian, we have ST26, called Wailing, or outer tomb. It's 1 kun below the belly button and 2 kun to the side of CV7 on the conception vessel. They say ST26 causes much of the same type of damage as ST25, mainly affecting the colon, but maybe with a bit more physical damage because it's lower down in the body.
They also say that a hard strike to ST26, being basically a strike to the intestines, can cause a blackout. In general, they talk about how pain or strikes to the gallbladder, intestines, and ureter can all cause you to lose consciousness.
Interesting. And finally, in this lower abdominal region on the stomach meridian, there's ST27 called Daiju, or the Great Huge. It's 2 cun below the belly button and 2 cun to the side of CV5 on the conception vessel.
Yeah.
Your sources just list this point without going into specifics about what happens when you hit it. Okay, moving down the body to the leg on the stomach meridian, we have ST31 called Big One, or hip hinge. It's right below that bony point at the front of your hip bone. And they call this point, get this, the leg draining point.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's pretty accurate. They say hitting ST31 really saps the energy, the chi from the legs, often making someone have to sit down or even fall right there. And you mentioned that this point is a great setup for a physical leg strike, like if you want to break a bone, because it weakens the legs first.
So weakening the legs energetically to set up a more damaging physical attack,
Yeah.
that's pretty strategic. Moving down the thigh along the stomach meridian, we have ST32 called Futu, or Hidden Rabbit. It's 6 cun above the upper outer edge of the kneecap, and they call this one the leg paralyzing point.
Yeah, and they say the way to hit ST32 is with a sweeping 180-degree strike across the thigh, either with your palm or some kind of tool. They say it paralyzes the leg, sends a shock through the whole body, and can even cause a knockout because the brain gets overloaded with all the sudden sensory input.
So a pretty debilitating effect on the leg, with the potential for affecting the whole system. Just a bit further down the thigh on the stomach meridian is ST33, called Yinshi, or Yin's Market. It's 3 cun above that same upper outer edge of the kneecap. You've noted that a strike here causes a lot of local pain and drains chi from the leg.
It's also called an electrical point, meaning it can cause a sudden rush of chi up towards the head. If you hit it hard enough, this can cause confusion and even a temporary blackout.
So an energetic effect leading to neurological consequences.
Interesting.
Next, we have ST34 called Liankui, or ridge mold. This one is 2 cun above that upper outer edge of the kneecap. And ST34 is a Zykleft point. Now, Zykleft points, we talked about how they're associated with the accumulation of Zen ki, which is like a refined type of vital energy, and they're used in healing to improve circulation and help with acute conditions.
Right.
But your DIMAC sources say that when you hit ST34 with what they call adverse ki, it does the opposite. Instead of helping things flow, it blocks the circulation of both ki and blood, which makes the leg weak, causes pain right where you hit it, and makes the whole leg feel weak. So another example of how striking a point can reverse its usual healing function.
Right.
Okay, now we get to ST36, the famous Zuzanli point. It's 3 cun below the knee joint and 1 finger width to the outside of the shin bone.
Zusanli is a very well-known and often used point in acupuncture for all sorts of things. But in DIMAC, if you hit it hard, they say it can affect the small intestine and might even paralyze the leg. They also say it can cause problems with the Wei Qi, which is the body's defensive energy against pathogens, and lead to immune system problems later. And of course, hitting ST36 causes a lot of pain immediately.
So the connection to the immune system through the Wei Qi is a pretty interesting long-term effect. Moving further down the leg, along the stomach meridian, we find ST40, called Fenglong, or Abundance and Prosperity. It's about 8 cun above the tip of the outer ankle bone. You've noted that this one's connected to the spleen.
Right. Besides causing local pain and chi drain, they say hitting ST40 affects the spleen and can cause an imbalance between the stomach and spleen meridians, leading to overall weakness. Interestingly, ST40 is also used in acupuncture to treat epilepsy. Now, they haven't seen any cases of hitting this point actually causing epilepsy, but they say it's possible given how it affects the body energetically.
So potentially triggering a condition that is also used to treat. That's kind of a paradox. Moving down to the ankle area on the stomach meridian, we get to SQ41, called Jiangxi, or release stream. It's in the crease where your ankle bends. It's a fire and jing point.
Right.
They say even though it's just near the ankle, hitting ST41 affects the stomach and can cause extreme nausea, so much so that it could stop a fight right there. It also drains chi from the legs, making them weak.
Right.
So a seemingly insignificant location causing a major systemic effect. Moving further down onto the foot on the stomach meridian, we find ST42, called Chongyang, or pouring yang.
Right.
This one's on the highest point of the top of your foot. And they say it's both an electrical point and a physiological point.
It sounds like it. Hitting ST42 can cause nerve damage, resulting in an immediate electric shock that shoots up the leg. And being a yuan point, it also causes a big loss of fundamental qi and a lot of local pain, which might be enough to stop someone from attacking again.
So it messes with both your nerves and your energy. Moving along the stomach meridian on the foot, we have SK 43, called Chandru, or Sinking Valley. It's further down the foot from the ankle, at the junction of the second and third metatarsal bones. It's a wood.